to the People Are People podcast, life lessons learned in real time, where we touch on the crazy realities of dealing with human behavior in the workplace. In 2022, I am presenting a series that I simply call the New Manager Series, where we will touch on a variety of topics every manager needs to know to be successful during and beyond their first year of management. Being a manager is not always a pretty job. It comes with highs and lows that you must prepare yourself to navigate. In this episode, we are going to be diving into appreciation awards. Should you give them out? Do they really matter? Listen, full transparency, I have really never been that great at giving out appreciation awards. And if I'm being honest, there's a couple of factors that figure into that for me personally. I think sometimes the way in which they are rolled out for leaders to distribute can sometimes be lacking, meaning that there's not always a clear description as relates to, or I should say criteria, as relates to who should receive an award. I have often found that other times when there are criteria set, the bar is so high that depending on the area in which you are leading, the people on your team will likely never qualify for those awards. And then I think sometimes, even if you create your own internal award system for, high performers, that even at that point for those who report to you, even though they feel wonderful that you're acknowledging their performance, it can still feel a bit underwhelming for them because it's still not necessarily aligning with the broader corporate awards that are out there. And so keep in mind that, as we have this conversation today, I am going to be referring to more of a corporate reward or award system for performance. So, I've come across a few articles over the last few weeks that have kind of inspired this particular podcast as it relates to showing appreciation for your team and or giving them individuals awards for great performance. So I want to start by saying this about awards, or giving appreciation to your team. I absolutely agree with the fact that as a leader, you should definitely take the opportunity to let your team know, or individuals on your team know, when they have met a standard but did that very well, or when they've exceeded a standard, just as you would, pull them aside for poor performance, right? Because you don't want them to have the impression that when you're wanting to meet with them or speak with them about something, it always has to be bad news or that they did something wrong, right? You want to also kind of give them the pat on the back to say, hey, great job. I think for me, I was always a little frustrated with award systems. And I think in my last position as a leader, it just kind of hit the tip of the iceberg for me. So let me share this story with you. So in my last role as a leader, the company had an award system that basically, as I alluded to, gave out awards for those who, maybe they saved the company $1 million, or they, basically put in 100 hours a week to do their job. And, you've heard me talk a lot about the fact that I was always a little frustrated because the fact that people were having to put in 100 hours, maybe had a lot to do with the fact that we were understaffed, or there were poor processes in place, or maybe not the best technology. So, here we are basically, in my mind, maybe just giving people the money that they deserved for putting in the extra time, because often these were monetary awards. Okay. Of course, as a leader, I always thanked them publicly. And yes, I would then, of course, do my best to get them a monetary award, obviously for going above and beyond to help keep us afloat. So about the award system, as I mentioned, you basically had to just really go above and beyond to get these awards. So oftentimes it made it very difficult to really be able to award people who maybe, yes, they did their job, but they did it so well that, it was just this seamless, flawless thing for business partners and for consumers, right? So the company decided to replace that award system with a more, what I would actually say was a more user-friendly system. But there were some challenges that came with the way they rolled it out. So initially, they rolled out this award system where basically not only could managers give recognition to good performance or, well-meaning tasks that were completed by individuals on the team, but coworkers could also give awards to their peers. Now, these awards were mainly in the form of points. So they could go into the system, identify that Susie Q did this amazing thing for a client. And as a result of that work, here's what the outcome was. And they could actually, award them with a certificate. And as a result of this, earning this recognition, then the individual on the team would also earn points. And over time, as they accumulated points, they could use that to then, acquire a good. So, or, it could be a service, it could be anything, but let's say maybe they saved up so many points that they could get a new iPad, or, so many points they could get themselves an Amazon gift card, right? So it was a really cool award system. You may be familiar with it. I know that, since leaving my past position, I've encountered it in other roles that I now have. And so very popular way of awarding people for, great work. The problem with the award system as it was rolled out at that time was, we went from having this super high bar, to meet in order to reward people, to basically anybody and everybody could give out points or give out these awards to their peers. And I had one leader who started out as, hey, if you feel someone's done a great job, you can justify it. Everybody, basically give it to them. These are points that they get to accumulate. Maybe not the same as the monetary awards that we were previously giving out. All those were still there, but we'll get back to that. So this point system was maybe the biggest driver at that time, right? The biggest thing that was attached to the program itself. So as I mentioned, we went from having this very stringent criteria to basically anybody and everybody could give out these points. And as I said, I had a leader who was all for it. Well, unfortunately, as a part of the, shift in organization, as I told you, I went to yet another leader. And this individual had the complete opposite approach to the awards. And it was really frustrating, right? Because she felt that basically people should have to, once again, we're back up at this bar. They would have to exceed this super high level of performance metrics. And despite us trying to explain to her that, hey, we hear you, but there's still this other bucket of awards out there that they would still qualify for should they do those things, which were, again, those monetary awards. We're talking, maybe they could get $1,000, $2,500. These points were a little bit different. Now, there were some instances, of course, there's always individuals who will abuse the recognition system, right? Particularly when you're dealing with peers, right? So, we might have people who said, oh, I was having a very tough day and you reached out to me and you motivated me to keep going on this day. So I just want to say thank you. And, as a result, they would get points for that. I know there was somebody on another team that I heard about where somebody called out sick. And so this person had to pick up their workload. And when that person came back, they gave them, they rewarded them with points. And unfortunately, the leader just kind of felt like, well, that's what they're supposed to do. That's their job. And, I think on some levels I understood where she was coming from, but at the same time, it almost kind of flew in the face of, I think, some of the things that they were trying to achieve with this reward system. The feeling that people wanted to be able to say thank you with more than an e-card or an email to their peers. So, it's examples like this where, at the end of the day, we ended up having to review every reward that was going out and sometimes send things back to people and say, sorry, you can't give them points for picking up a difficult case for you. You're just going to have to say thank you with an e-card, that kind of stuff, right? It just became very frustrating for me because this was yet another example of, okay, first we have this bar that's impossible for certain types of employees to exceed. And finally, the company decides to maybe help keep the bar program over here to the right, but we're going to provide you now with a more user-friendly program, and we're still getting restrictions slapped on it. I think for me, that's what's always been frustrating about appreciation programs. And so as a manager, as we look at this new manager series this year and what I want you to take away from this podcast, I do want you to really think about what your appreciate award system is going to be for performance beyond your standard quarterly touch base calls or your one-to-ones where you're praising people for good work. Yes, absolutely. You're going to want to have those as your foundation. But if you are going to have an appreciation program, kind of take away from my experience of making sure you're very clear about what the criteria is for giving out those awards, and make sure that you're fair about it. Make sure that if there is a level above you that has to approve those awards, that you understand, what their criteria is going to be so that, as you're actually giving out those awards, or if if your subordinates have that ability to give their peers awards, that you can convey, what the expectations are around such a program. And be consistent. If you're going to do it quarterly, definitely do it quarterly. If you're going to give something out every month, you're going to have to be consistent. Really look for things that everybody is doing well, and not meaning everybody's doing the same thing well, but look at each individual on your team and really think about what is it that they're doing. What is it that they did, I should say, that maybe did exceed expectations, or maybe it's a best practice that you really want to recognize. I think for me, what another frustrating factor about award programs is that sometimes you see the same people who come back and they're getting these awards, and it's head scratching. You're like, well, this company has 70,000 employees and we're giving the same person this $10,000 or $15,000 award. What's wrong with this picture? Yes, that did happen. I want to say it was actually bigger than that, but I was at an organization where they were giving out these awards to individuals, and it was a very large corporation. And they made the comment that this person had done this extraordinary thing. And this was the second year in a row that they were going to give her, I want to say it was like $20,000. It was a significant amount of money for work performance. And listen, I'm not taking away from what she did. Kudos to her. It's amazing that she's done this for a second year in a row. But I struggled with the fact that out of 60,000 or 70,000 people, we couldn't find someone different in the next year. And it was very frustrating, right? Particularly when I knew there was people elsewhere that, did amazing things and yes, saved the company millions of dollars, or, invented some new innovative program, yet we're giving somebody the award for another year in a row. So as a manager, because this is just nice and simple at that level, really look at each individual on your team and look for something that you can reward them for or give them recognition for in front of their peers. You also have options to create categories for awards. So, of course, you can always have a vanilla award program, I should say, where you just give out awards for, great performance. But there are also options for you as a leader to create categories of awards, which I kind of liked doing, when I did it because it then created more opportunity to award multiple people, right? To really define what it was that they did that distinguished them from their peers. So, for example, you might create an award that's focused on being a team player, and this is really important, I think, or beneficial, I should say, if you have a team in which you're trying to establish teamwork. Sometimes we have folks that like to work in silos, but giving out awards in which you're recognizing people for being team players can also sometimes help to motivate others to step up to the plate and work on being a team player. You could have, I like to call them superstar type of awards, where you're just calling out someone who really rose to the top, right? They were the cream of the crop for this period of time, and here are the multiple things that they did well that you want to recognize. You might have someone who really handled a tough customer service type of issue well. And so you can call that out, right? There are so many different ways that you can use awards to bring recognition to different people on your team. I just want to make sure that you think about that, right? Don't be afraid to think outside of the box should you partake in an award program. So I would like to give a word of caution if you are thinking about embarking on an award program or participating in your company's award program, and that is being consistent in your approach. One thing I do know is that once you start this participation in any form of an award program, your team will definitely be looking to you to continue down that path. They are going to be looking for the awards for almost probably anything that they do. I can remember having someone on my team who was very competitive with her peers. And so anytime anyone sent her a word of compliment, she always would forward it to me. Like, look what I did. This is what I did, right? And I think it was just her effort to ensure that she received some form of recognition, as related to her performance. And she was a very strong performer. So, what I would encourage you to do is to be prepared to navigate those types of situations. Just because you receive positive feedback for performance, does not necessarily mean you qualify for the award each and every time. Be fair to others. Now, if there truly are no others who are rising to the level of an individual employee, then, yes, absolutely, you can award them again for great performance. But, again, I'm going to caution you against that. But going back to the award program itself, make sure you're consistent in your efforts. You want to make sure that it is authentic and genuine, meaning that any award that you are giving out definitely has meaning. It has the data to support the decision, so to speak. And, if your goal is to motivate others, inspire others on the team, that you can really point to that in your communication back to your team as it relates to why someone is receiving an award. And speaking of which, think about how your award system will look. Will you have, I call them public recognitions, where perhaps they happen during team meetings? Or are you going to maybe just recognize people in a one-to-one environment? Some people don't like public recognition and others bask in it. So you'll definitely want to have some awareness for the people on your team and what approach might, be the best as it relates to that recognition. Again, if your goals are to boost morale and inspire others, create camaraderie, team building and such by giving out these awards, then you're likely going to want to do that in a more public venue, such as a team meeting, but if this is more about you just giving recognition and appreciation to how people are performing on the team that you're managing, then you might look at doing it in a more one-to-one type of setting. So, always keep in the back of your mind why you're doing it, whether it's because the company said you had to do it or you've decided to, implement your own version of an award program. Make sure that you're genuine in why you're doing it. You don't want people to feel like it's just this fake type of program that has no meaning behind it. And again, I just want to reiterate that you make a deep effort to recognize different people as often as you can, so that it truly feels like you're not favoring one individual, but that you are looking at what everyone else is doing, that you see them and you acknowledge their work. And so that kind of brings me to the back end of this episode of our podcast. Employees, despite how we may feel as leaders or how busy we are as leaders, they often just want to be appreciated for the work that they're doing. And for some people, the award is the thing that makes them feel as though someone sees what it is they're doing. So, despite your word of mouth, you could tell them every day how great they are. Some employees need to see something extra that I guess perhaps even gives value, right, to what it is they're doing. So, that is one of the perks of doing the program, is that it is another way to acknowledge the great work people are doing on your team and to show your appreciation and or that of the company for which you all work for. So with that brings us to the end of this episode of the People Are People podcast, Life Lessons Learned in Real Time. I want to thank you for taking time out today to listen to my podcast. I know that there's only a million others that you could be listening. Please remember to stay safe, and I'll catch you in the next podcast.